Alright, so everybody from the Tokyo event. Currently, after our starting our third day of the event, after two full packed days. Anyway, at least for me personally, it's been crazy busy and then pretty packed with full of activities. Lots of interesting announcements to the first two keynote days. So, how was your guys' experience? We also have.
Let's introduce our panelists.
Yeah.
First of all, Sharone Zitzman here. I'm also joining Arthur live from the podcast, live from the summit, the Tokyo Summit. My first summit, actually. I'm very excited to be here, and it got to be the Tokyo one, so all the better. I have Ben Kepes here from diversitymedia.net, but also guest writer for Forbes and a bunch of other high-profile publications. Yay, Ben. We got Flavio Percoco here from Red Hat, and Florian Haas from Stexo, all awesome panelists who will give their unique perspectives on what has been, for me, an excellent summit. So let's do a quick round. Go for it, Ben.
It's been interesting. I was kind of a little bit, like I've said for a little while, that OpenStack keeps trying to be lots of things or everything to everyone, and I need to focus a little bit more. So a little bit concerned around maybe going down another rabbit path. But having said that, there's some good case studies, good customer stories, more adoption, more production workloads. So that's all good stuff.
So for me, as part of the community and the developers community, it's been really exciting to see some of the projects actually emerge, and many of the issues that we've had for the last couple of years, like for example Neutron, have been I wouldn't say fixed, but at least there's been a lot of progress there, and it's been a great win for the community. From a governance perspective, from a development perspective, to see that project actually emerge and not die like we expected, or like many of us expected a couple of years ago. So it's been awesome to see those results.
For me, it's been the usual problem of not nearly being able to go to all the talks and sessions that I wanted to go to. I guess this is something that we all share. I also had more of my talks accepted than I was even hoping for, so I've been extremely busy here. But on the plus side, and this is actually a real win at this summit, on the conference organizers part, they finally got the videos right. I think the AV team is doing a really, really fantastic job. So this is the first summit where it actually doesn't hurt as badly to miss a session, because you actually have a really, really high quality recording to go back to after that.
On that note, I would just like to apologize first and foremost for the noise, but I feel like it adds to the dynamic of the genuine busyness here at welcome to Tokyo, and for being late. So headlines from the event. What did you find interesting? What were things that you heard about?
So obviously a bunch of talk around containers. Rackspace launched its thing. It seems like, that's another example. Containers are the new cool, so is everyone jumping on that for the right reasons or for the wrong reasons? I kind of said the same stuff about the focus around NFV and SDN, but had a little pushback about that from people saying that a lot of the customer demand is from carriers who want that stuff. So I can accept that.
Yeah, well, again, for me, listening to all the new headlines and announcements from different companies is very amazing, because you get to see how they're using it and what the ideas they have is to use and how they can actually adopt OpenStack. But that for me is more like adoption. It's not just Neutron, it's all the new services that we have now in the governance model. All those services trying to achieve or accomplish a single mission, single goal, and seeing companies actually thinking about how they can use those projects and how they can build products on top of those projects. That for me has been amazing. And you can see that in many other different adoptions again from a company perspective.
One thing that has been particularly interesting for me is that we are seeing some really, really, really serious talk in the high availability arena, which has always been sort of focus point of my own interests. And it's really nice to see people coming together from all vendors, working on effectively solving the same problems and actually coming together and solving them in a very similar way, meaning we're finally establishing our best practices, we're agreeing on how we want to do things, and we're seeing very streamlined implementations of those across vendors. And I think that's a very encouraging thing to see in terms of stability and the viability of products moving forward.
And you'll be happy to know that actually we also have some other sessions like from the development side. Many projects looking at how they can improve the HA area. And also from a cross-project perspective, we've been also talking about how we can like adopt some of the technologies that would make OpenStack more HA active for
It's certainly come a long way since that session in San Francisco in 2012. When 40% of the room in front of me arguing that HA wasn't needed, and then
I'm sorry.
and then at least eventually the majority of the attendees coming to the conclusion that hell yeah, we actually do need this. So we better get going on it.
So would you guys agree like that there's a general sense that the whole community is getting more mature and more like adult and not getting crazy over the new crazy features, rather stabilizing the features that we already have in place and making sure it's production ready?
Both is going on. It's definitely, I mean, it's been 5 or 6 years, so it is more mature as it should be. But at the same time, there is kind of, from the commercial perspective, every large vendor wants OpenStack to be its secret sauce. So there is a lot of jumping on new stuff, whether that's containers or whatever. And I kind of, like Jonathan Rice says, it's actually customer demand, and that's what's happening. I don't actually buy that. I don't think the customers are coming and saying, Rackspace, you need to deliver us a container solution on top of OpenStack. I think that Rackspace is maybe a little bit screwed and wants to find a commercial kind of Hail Mary pass, and that's the reason for that rather than customer demand.
So the community has definitely matured a lot in the last couple of years, but I believe that the key thing there is that the community itself has made that a priority and has made stability, interoperability, and a whole bunch of other buzzwords a priority for the development in every cycle. And that has gotten us to a point where there's a feeling of the community being more mature and more stable, because we realize that, okay, we have enough now to sell something. It's not like we're not there yet. But the things we have, like there are some issues here, so we gotta we have to deliver something that people can actually use and rely on that without being scared every night before they go to bed.
One thing that we discussed at OpenStack Israel over the panel discussion was this issue of where we are in the famed or infamous Gartner hype cycle. I think one thing that some people are feeling is that there is really no such thing as a trough of disillusionment in OpenStack. There is rather a very, very, very deep gorge with a very rocky bottom that is very hurtful to fall upon. So there is, and I'm thinking that we're beginning to see the first people actually working their way out of that after initial disappointments with OpenStack, where the product was simply overhyped or people were sold concepts that just didn't fit their use case, and now they're working their way out of that.
But it's interesting because 5 years ago it was like the value prop was, hey, you can get your own private AWS, and the fact of the matter is, we all watch AWS. Those guys are innovating at warp speed. There's no parity there. It's not your own private AWS. And so, kind of, I mean, maybe it was naivety, or maybe there was kind of a little bit of a marketing job happening back in the day when it was trying to be sold as something that isn't. Maybe now the message is slightly is more mature, and it's like, this is what OpenStack is. It absolutely has a use case, it absolutely has value, but it's not AWS.
I have my own thoughts on that innovation cycle, which we should probably discuss offline because it would take longer than twice this podcast. But
in a nutshell, because we want to hear what you have to say.
In a nutshell, this sounds remarkably like the discussion around, say, MySQL and Oracle in the early 2000s. It's like, why is anyone building a database? Because Oracle is innovating like crazy. There is no additional space. There are no additional applications you can think of that could possibly need a relational database. And we know how that turned out.
See, I'm not saying that there's no new applications. What I'm saying is that not only has AWS got all of the kind of core stuff that OpenStack has, but Aurora and Lambda and pick your amazing new thing that AWS rolls out, and OpenStack hasn't and shouldn't have, I suggest, those, isn't able to do those things because just the speed at which that.
So normally when we start comparing AWS with OpenStack, like at the very beginning, every comparison was like, we're not there yet, we're not AWS yet, and at some point we just agreed on we don't have. I think that's the right way to do it.
Yeah, I agree.
But normally, like nowadays, when we talk about like when we compare OpenStack with AWS, we're basically saying we're not as fast as AWS in terms of development and innovation. And I think that's an actual issue. Right? That's something that actually happens in the OpenStack community. It takes a lot of time to work on something new. It takes a lot of time to innovate some of the areas and fix some of the issues that we know we have. But I guess that's the trade-off of being an open source project. I'm not saying it cannot be fixed. I'm saying that we're working on trying to find a solution, a strategy that will make us go faster and not necessarily chase AWS, but at least be faster on the development side, on being able to innovate and follow what the market wants from us, air quotes.
There's also something to be said about a private solution and an open source solution and the transparency that comes with that. So you have visibility to all the problems in OpenStack. You don't have visibility to all the problems with AWS, and that's just the way it is. And
So do you want to discuss your perspective in the new project? Containers now, the new now starting to focus networking purpose for containers, and we're seeing a lot of projects popping up, trying to solve that area. So, like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, the thing is that from a governance perspective, there are so many new projects now that we have the Big Ten, and like we've in the last 6 months we've approved several new projects. We've seen some other projects trying to join the Big Ten, and I believe that's amazing, and that's the whole point behind the Big Ten. We wanted to be welcoming to many of the projects, but I would say like some of those projects that fell into the Big Ten as soon as we opened it. So like again, air quotes, and have done a lot of progress. Like containers is one of those, and I believe this is just like it is amazing, but it is still like a buzzword. There are many other cool projects under the hood that should be used by every OpenStack deployment, but they're not being used yet. Like some of the networking ones, like load balancers, like DNSs. Like it would be super cool to have DNSs always available in your cloud. Like that's something basic if you want to be like to deploy your application and want to make it scale. You don't want to remember all the IP addresses. You want your cloud to do that for you, right? So there are many other projects under the hood, and very few people are talking about those. And I believe some of them should be all deployed in the same.
That's actually a good point you're making because, and this is something that I liked in the keynotes on Tuesday about sort of users' ability to actually look at public cloud offerings that are based on OpenStack by their feature set, as in what's supported here and what is not. Because as you look around, there are a bunch of cloud offerings out there, public cloud offerings out there that are offering an OpenStack cloud, which from the viewpoint of an OpenStack developer is effectively incomplete. Like they might offer like a full public cloud, but you can't orchestrate because they don't enable heap. Or they're offering a full public cloud, but for whatever reason, they're not offering load balancing as a service. So you're operating under certain assumptions that just don't hold true for some. And to have that ability to compare is a good thing. And I also totally agree with you on the fact that there are a lot of things out there in OpenStack that we actually consider absolutely core that everyone should be deploying, but not everyone is. And to have that transparency and visibility is certainly a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's the good thing about an open source project, but it's the bad thing about the open source project because people can kind of take the bits they like. And then there's all that tension around when an open source project is kind of utilized by a commercial vendor and they have their own kind of commercial drivers, and their decision making isn't based on what's right necessarily for the project, it's what's right for them.
I don't know, this might or might not make sense, but sometimes I just wonder whether the vendors or the people deploying OpenStack's public cloud. I mean, right now I'm just talking about public clouds. Private clouds is just a whole different story. But people deploying it as a public cloud are actually following just like what the market wants or what the user wants. Because if you're just following the whole bunch of buzzwords and the things that you should probably have to be one of the cool kids, then you'll just deploy containers everywhere, and you will probably assume that you're done with it and you're good and all your users will be happy. It might be true for some people, but for many others that actually want to use your cloud for big scales and like deploy a whole like super cool and that will grow forever application on your cloud, and that might not be sufficient for that.
But another thing that I think we're seeing not only at this summit but also over the last few summits is we're moving away from, and this is tying into what you said earlier, Ben, we're moving a little bit away from the public cloud is everything mantra, which then has the corollary of AWS is the yardstick for everything, for the simple reason that what people are using OpenStack for is effectively re-architecting their data center along cloud lines. Now, I'm not going to get into the discussion of whether you can call an OpenStack managed data center a cloud or not, because that's just a name game to play. But the fact of the matter is that that is a very, very appealing aspect of OpenStack for a bunch of environments out there. And to see that being treated equivalently versus the public cloud use case is something that, at least from my perspective, that looks like it's gaining acceptance. That idea is gaining acceptance. That yes, it is actually something that is dual purpose, and it's actually a very good way to build a public cloud, or if you will, and if you want to be old-fashioned, call it a virtualized data center. Doesn't matter.
I think the other thing that's interesting is, in the last week, so obviously the EU had its ruling about safe harbor, and I think really good timing here, because people are really worried about US companies, and so there's a really strong OpenStack story there. I was in a session yesterday with Fujitsu where they were talking about their federated global cloud. It's there's actually a value prop there. Who knows what's going to happen with that safe harbor ruling, but people are a little bit worried.
Yeah, there's other things that I'm basically waiting for to happen, which is, speaking of value add, I'm kind of waiting for the first vendor to roll out an OpenStack cloud that is whose proposition is whatever you deploy on here is automatically PCI DSS compliant, or is automatically HIPAA compliant for a healthcare application or something like that.
Vertical clouds.
Yeah. And that would be an interesting thing to see when it happens.
But you still see, like, the HP public cloud announcement that they're basically shutting down their activities, right? So, and in contrast to that, you're also seeing the blue box success. So I think what are your thoughts on, like, what are the gaps and what would it take to make it successful? Because obviously it's a really challenging business to run OpenStack.
I think we need to be really careful about what constitutes success and failure, because I don't think HP had any customers for Helion. Maybe they did. I don't know.
I think there's more behind that we actually know. That's my actual thought on it.
And I think there's a lot of it is high level business decisions, which don't have anything to do with the efficacy or otherwise of OpenStack. It's like a company gets a rush of blood and it makes a decision based on that. So like HP's decision, it's got nothing to do with was OpenStack a good thing or a bad thing for them. It's HP kind of was a train wreck.
We'll quote that.
They don't talk to me anymore.
We like Ben's blunt opinions, and that's why he's here. So I agree. I think there's a lot of business decisions behind the scenes on that also. I don't think we can know all of the reasons, but I don't know if there was a technology aspect or an adoption aspect to it. But, actually, we were chatting with Donnie Burkholz yesterday, and he thought the biggest headline was the certification program. I wanted to hear what you guys think about that big announcement. I actually think it plays also into your whole OpenEDX kind of concept. He doesn't think there's enough manpower and skilled manpower around OpenStack right now.
Right. So that's that. So our general challenge that we have, not only in the OpenStack community, but in any community around distributed technology, you name it, it's basically Ceph or any kind of the SDN communities or the container communities or whatever, is we're building all these systems for three reasons, pretty much, and that's effectively cost, scale, and speed. But the actual problem that we're having, that most of us are having, is not one of those, but it's one of skill. There's just simply too few people on the market to work on those systems and to drive them forward. Poaching is not a sustainable option, so therefore we need to facilitate training people and we need to facilitate learning for people. The certification effort is one that has been in the works for quite some time, and I'm glad that the foundation has finally made the move to say, yes, we're going to be sort of the independent certification authority. That actually defines sort of the certification criteria rather than devolving all that to the vendors. And now what that also means is that we now need cost-effective, scalable, efficient means of training people up. And yes, our own announcement with our Hestex Academy work that we're doing basically as the community crossover work between the OpenStack and OpenEdX communities, so basically enabling OpenEdX for OpenStack and OpenStack for OpenEdX, is something that we hope to be very helpful in that regard. That means we're also helping opening up another community to OpenStack, because the OpenEdX folks up to this point have been very much AWS centric. So we'll see where that leads us. If it leads to many more engineers and operators and admins being trained on Ceph and Neutron and OpenStack and Docker and Mesos and Kubernetes and you name it, then great, be exactly what we wanted to do.
I think it would be really interesting to see how it plays along with many of the other certification, like the people doing certification and trainings, and how they will be able to like work together towards like Florian said, like training more people and just spreading out all the knowledge about OpenStack and how they can actually use it and deploy it. There are many companies doing certifications on their own distributions, so I think that's not going to change at all.
You can plug Red Hat.
Yeah, we do it at Red Hat. We have certifications on OSP, on Rel OSP, and yeah, I mean it's like that's not going to change. Like we have the certification on our distribution of OpenStack, but it will be super cool to know how that would work with some of the other, like probably not as big or some of the companies that are just mostly focused on training and certification.
Out of curiosity, how often have you rewritten the product certification? Because you basically rebased the product 3 times in the last 2 years.
I do not have an answer for that.
Okay.
And I think it's important. It was a little bit jarring yesterday in the keynote to see IBM and Blue Box stand up, and essentially most of the pitch was about trying to poach, employees, and we're in this beautiful, lovely kumbaya community, and yet we're all trying to rip each other's throats out to get each other's employees. So I think you're absolutely right. There is a massive skill shortage, and more training, more certification can only be a good thing.
So basically, every activity, I think I think that the foundation is trying to make the balance between what should the foundation do versus what should you let the vendors do, right? It's always a question: should we take that approach? Should we do that ourselves as the foundation, or should we let the vendors play between themselves to let the community gain from that?
But in open source, it's a relatively common thing that you have a non-profit organization offering a mostly vendor-neutral type of certification, and then you have individual vendors also offering certifications for their products, which are then typically part of some sort of certification track where you can then call yourself, a certified engineer, a certified architect of whatever within their product suite. And I think that's perfectly fair and fine. But what I missed in the OpenStack community was this ability to take a baseline, non-vendor specific OpenStack Foundation approved certification, and for that to change now, I think that's certainly
all better.
Yeah, I agree. That the baseline, I think, is the most important, because you can't really know what it is that that vendors are focusing on if it's something that's specific to their kind of interest. And so I think it's actually a really good thing. I think we're going to do a short podcast just because we're doing just fun thoughts from the summit. Any last round of thoughts? some things that you want to kind of say about where OpenStack is going, what you think is going to be happening in the near future, and
Definitely barbecue in Austin and paella in Barcelona.
and sightseeing in Tokyo today, finally.
Exactly. And I was gonna say exactly the same thing. I was gonna word it slightly differently. I was gonna say sushi and sashimi and udon and soba in Tokyo are great and wonderful, and so let's go for brisket and wings and whatever we have.
Austin is where they're located, right? Is that like
right.
the first time they're doing it there?
In Austin? No.
It was the second time.
Second time.
The very
We're
first
going
time
back
was
to
in
Austin,
Austin.
yeah.
Oh, look at that.
Super cool.
Yeah. Your thoughts?
For the future of OpenStack, mostly. Also, I believe there's, like I said at the very beginning, like I believe there's a lot to do on the interoperability side, on the stability side of OpenStack. So I do not want to like block innovation, but I definitely would like to see more efforts being put there. And if their vendors company obviously using OpenStack and they have some extra resources, instead of coming up with a new project that we have to take care of, why don't we just put all these resources on making OpenStack better? Because we have enough there that we have to make it more stable.
So I'm personally really happy to see that the community maturing and being more focused on the specific, on solving specific problems, and not just bashing between vendors and fighting. So actually discussing with customers and actually understanding what they need and solving those areas. So I'm really excited about that. While still new cool projects and new cool stuff, doing investment there as well.
And another thing that I think is fairly interesting is the fact that we're now sort of in phase 2 of the OpenStack business landscape,
Yes.
which is the first round of companies that were founded around OpenStack are now either folded or have been acquired. So we've been through this first consolidation round, and so we're entering a new phase here in the business landscape, and that's certainly going to be interesting as well.
And I would also like to add that the community is trying to evolve from being a just development community to be something that also takes care of the companies or people using OpenStack in the market. And there's also there's now a product working group in the community. So if you have needs, requirements, or thoughts about where OpenStack should go, what the requirements from the market are, it would be super awesome if you can just go to those communities, those people, and just share your thoughts, share your vision, because those, like, we collect out that data. It's not like we just ignore it. It is open source, so it's really hard to just follow what everyone wants. But having the data is super useful, and if we make it available, it's all for the better.
Two things I liked at the summit has nothing to do about looking forward. I remember these at the last second. There were two things that I happened to notice, and this has to do with the kind of like the vendors, the booths. So all the Americans had like kind of Japanese flags. Did you guys notice that? And then there was like the one Japanese vendor that had baseballs. I thought that was so funny. I thought that was hysterical. It's kind of like everyone playing to each other's culture. That made me laugh. I went around with a little picture of that. I thought that was really cute. Another thing that I thought was very cool, and I thought it kind of conveys a sort of sentiment towards kind of like what the content has been at the event. I feel like it's been a little bit more, it's been going towards being a little bit more corporate sponsory type talks, let's be honest. And I think that the deep brown bag talks took off this year because they were like kind of the organic talks that didn't get in. That room was packed. And I think that kind of has something really interesting about like what people actually do want to hear and kind of the talks that come like from bottom up.
Yes, there's also some ongoing thinking that's happening at the conference organization level. We're considering better ways to get feedback for talks. That was a first that we had this time around. We finally got feedback forms on all the talks, and all that is going to be fed back into the track chairs of the next summit. So we can actually refer back to how a speaker has performed in the past, what topics were interesting in the past, and what things are interesting now. So there are certainly improvements here to the conference itself as well.
I don't know how much they want to open the visibility around that, but at Velocity, the people going to talks can literally vote on them. I mean, you have their like star levels or things, that is actually something that's important, you know, if you want to cultivate, you know, other content. I'm looking forward. Yeah, this is my first summit, so I am hoping to attend some more. I think I want to give a shout out to the OpenStack committee. I think they do a wonderful job. I think they work really, really hard to put something together. And I think not enough is said about the work that goes in behind the scenes about these types of days. And Florian and Arthur and I, at the very least, know what goes into that because we do one OpenStack day, and this is an incredible endeavor. So looking forward to the next one. Thank you, Ben, Flavio, Florian, for joining us. And stay tuned for the next episode. You guys are welcome to join us for something more targeted to a topic as well anytime. But thanks for your time. And
Thanks for having us.
arigato.